Reloading the XP100 221 Remington Fireball pistol, which is a great accurate pistol that was developed in about 1961 or 62. I'm going to be teaching you what I consider the safest way to do reloading. But as I stated before, make sure that you consult a good reloading manual, and it will teach you step by step of the things that you need to do in order to be safe in reloading, and what not to do to make sure that you don't have a tragic accident. I took some of the items out of the reloading room and set it up here in a spot that's got a little bit more room so that you can see what's going on. It's also got better lighting as well. I chose for this particular video, even though I have a bunch of other manuals here, some of them are even antique, for the XP100, the 221 Remington Fireball, believe it or not, there's not a whole lot of information in reloading manuals that's still available. That's a pretty, it's not an antique cartridge, but it's at least a pretty obsolete cartridge in a lot of circles. And so I had to look around a lot in my library of reloading equipment to figure out exactly where I wanted to go with this. This is a manual that I bought here about 20 years ago. And it talks about the XP100 and the 221 Remington Fireball, and of course the XP100 was chambered in a lot of other cartridges too. For example, the 7mm BR and some other ones as well. The powder that I've chosen to use is the IMR 4227, and it's the one that's in parentheses here. The beginning load at 2,400 feet per second was 14.5 grains. The load that I'm going to shoot is still in the beginning portion of it at 15.1 grains. Your moderate load is 15.7, and then your highest pressure and highest velocity load at about 2,600 feet per second is 15.7 grains. So I'm below, I'm just right in the center of the loads. And then your highest velocity load is 16.3. Don't go there, at least at first. Understand more about velocities and pressure points and things like this before you do. That could be a disaster for you. So again, 15.1 grains at 2,500 feet per second. IMR 4227. 221 Remington Fireball is when you're loading 223 or 222 or 222 Remington Fireball or 357 or 30-06, whatever, only have that cartridges and that powder and those primers on your reloading bench within reach. Now you can have some down at the end of your bench if it's 6 or 8 or 10 feet away, but within reach, everything should be out of the way. Otherwise, you'll get mixed up, and all of a sudden you'll pick up a 357 or a 9mm or something else that actually will fit in the dies, but it'll be a disaster, and you don't want to go there. Only keep on your reloading bench that powder, primer, bullets that you're going to use in that particular reloading. Okay. So the first thing that you have to do in reloading, and I'm going to get over here. This is an RCBS reloading press, little RCBS table. And I've got a lot of other things on here that are reloading components, so I can show you what to do and what not to do as we go on. There's two things when you start to reload for the 222 Remington Fireball. If you're using brand new brass, which this is, sometimes it's not necessary to full length size your cases, but I always do because a lot of times the cases in shipping and handling and so forth are dented. The mouth of the case is damaged a little bit, and so I run all my cases through the dies. A key element in what you're dealing with here is your shell holder. Make sure you have the right shell holder. Don't assume that just because it fits pretty good that it's good enough. And the reason is, it may not be something that's going to blow your gun up, but you could stick a case in the dies and it could be sometimes ruin your dies trying to get that case out, or you at least have to have a case, a stuck case puller that you would have to deal with, and it would slow you down and probably cause you a little bit of foul language that you don't want to deal with. Okay, I've removed my primer catcher so that the camera can easily see that it goes on, but your primer catcher just snaps in here. Almost all reloading presses have a primer catcher of some sort in order to keep the primers, the spent primers, from all over the floor. This is the set of RCBS reloading dice for 220 Remington Fireball. Make sure again that it says 222 Remington Fireball and you've got that right. Make sure your shell holder is the one for that base of that cartridge that you're dealing with. And so the first thing you've got to do is to adjust this for your particular press. So what you do is you put it in, put the handle down so it's all the way at the top, screw this all the way in until it touches the case, touches the shell holder. And here we go. We just touched the shell holder. You see how it's kind of, that means it's locking down on top of that shell holder. It's got just a little bit of pressure. I put the lock ring down, then I remove it and put this up where it's out of the way. Grab the lock ring and the die and open it up just a little bit, keeping your finger so that it doesn't move. Then you can see the set screw that tightens it on. Now if you don't unlock it just a little bit off the press, it'll get so tight that you'll have a hard time dealing with it. Then you make sure it's tight. It's tight. So now that is set for that particular cartridge and that for that reloading press. This is the depriming pin. And what the depriming pin does is it pushes the primer out of the case. These obviously don't have the primer in because they're new cases, but it pushes the primer out so that you can put a new one in. Now let me tell you this. If you look on the inside, you can see that there is another little apparatus on the inside that the priming pin fits into. Make sure that you just set the primer out, the priming pin out just far enough to take the primer out of the case. If you screw it too far down, and you can with these rings here, then that little piece of web that's in there that holds the priming pin will hit the inside base of the case, and it can either ruin the case or most probably it will buckle this rod that's on the inside and ruin that portion of the dies. You'll have to order another one from RCBS or whatever you got. So now it's locked. This is set in the right distance. We put this back in the press and we're ready to start resizing. As you resize, you've got to have some sort of a sizing lubricant. There's all kinds that's made. I really like the one that's made by Hornaday, and that's what this is. In fact, this is a brand new container of it. And this is a real greasy substance, and I put just a little bit on my finger. You don't need to have a whole bunch, and a lot of people really think that you need to put a lot of lubricant on your case, just a smear of it, and it's important that you do it. Now, not so important on brand new cases, but if you've got some cases that have been swelled up from firing and you have to resize them and you don't have any lubricant on that case, then that case will stick in the die, and as you try to withdraw it out, you pull the edge of the rim off the case, and now you've got a case stuck in the die, and you'll have to go through a process to get that case out without ruining your dies. So then you go in all the way up, knocks the primer out. Of course, it doesn't have a primer in now, so it's not on the floor, and come in, and then that case is done. And And so I'll start up here. And here is a case here that's got a primer in it. And so I just wanted to show you how that would be, and you'll be able to see that primer come out. The primer comes out the center of the case through a little hole in the rod right there. And it's right here. There's the primer. That's the spent primer. Okay? So we'll take and do those first. See how it is? I'm only going to do 5 in order to make sure we have enough time to do this whole video. Oops. It's a little difficult sometimes to get set up where you can see everything that I'm trying to talk to you about, but it can happen. Now, when you finish doing knocking all your primers out, there's a little apparatus that you can get that is really handy, and it's called a primer pocket remover, and it removes the burnt powder. And I'm not going to do this one because this is the first time it's been reloaded. The next step is to take a deburring tool, and if you'll notice on the inside of these cases, it's really flat and sharp on the edges on both inside and outside. The deburring tool is made so you can just put it in on the inside and just a little twist. You can see how it's shiny. And then you do the outside. So inside and outside, and now it's deburred. Now there's other things that you can use, and that's what I was going to tell you, is that this is one made by Hornaday, and I realize this is kind of cheating, but you just put it on the inside and then on the outside. Makes it a lot quicker, but it doesn't do any better job. So we'll use the Hornaday one on these cases here. Just that quick, and boy, that'll save you a lot of headache of buckling cases, ruining bullets and things like this, especially if you're using cast bullets. And we'll eventually do some reloading demonstration on cast bullets where you have to flare the mouth of the case and so forth. Now, that kind of takes care of that, except we're not going to load these, right? So we dang sure don't want those sitting around where we can get mixed up and put powder in one of these cases or something else. Only have, like I was telling you, the cases that are on your press that was within 6 feet, because you can't reach further than that. So I'm going to put those cases right here. And if I wonder what those cases are there for later on, I'll still be okay because I won't have them loaded. We don't want to have those loaded. Okay, so we've got these sized, deprimed, and we've got them chamfered. And so we're ready for one other thing. What would that be? Oh, yes. We've got to put primers in them. Now here is a Lyman automatic primer feeder that will feed those cases. They also make a primer mechanism that comes with your press too that you can do, but in this case we're going to use this one. Now this one's really a good one, and you just open it up, which opens the window up, so it lets the primers go into the priming arm. There you go. The primer should be set flush or a little bit below this. Now there's a lot of people that use large rifle primers and large pistol and large rifle, small pistol and small pistol, and small and small rifle. And I've done that too, but I would suggest that you don't do that when you first start reloading, because the cup is a little difference in thickness on the pistol primers, both in large pistol and small pistol. And for safety's sake, you want to use what tells you in the manual to use. And so we'll do these just like this. Now, as you're priming these cases, you want to make sure that as you prime these cases, is that you keep the mouth of that case away from you as you prime it, so in case it does go off, you don't lose an eye or you don't get burnt. Keep your fingers out of the way, keep your face out of the way, keep anybody else out of the way who's got their... This is the first time I've used this one, and there's a learning curve, and apparently I'm not doing well with the learning curve. There we go. Okay, we've got the cases deburred, we've got the cases deprimed, we've got the cases primed, and now all we've got left to do is to figure out the powder. Okay, this is a powder scale that is really an antique powder scale. This was actually listed in the manual in a gun magazine that I just got from 1937. So that'll tell you how far back that it goes. Now they have powder scales that even go further back than this. In this powder scale, what you did is you had a little tin with different weights. And each one of them would say 5 grains, 10 grains, 20 grains, 2.5 grains, 1 grain, 1/2 grain, and whatever. And so if you were going to, for example, load 25 grains or 30 grains, you would take the amount of grains that you've got. In this case, I've got a 20 and a 4 and a 1. So this would be 25 grains. You put the 25 grains in this container, the pan, you set this on your scale. It's a balance scale, and you'll notice that it is balanced right here, and you move these back and forth until it balances this out. And actually they're made, I didn't do it, but they're made so you can move back and forth, and then you lock the two together so that they don't accidentally move. That's the first type of balance scales they had. And so I just thought I would let you see that. So I'm going to set this over here out of the way. It's really quite heavy. It surprised you. It's all cast, but in those days they built things to last. And then Pacific, and that's what this made, have a little, so that you can do a little bit of powder. Now, another one of the kinds that they have is if you want some really inexpensive ones, here's the one that's an electric one, and you open it up, put your pan on top, turn it on, it'll eventually go to 0. When it goes to 0, you're ready to put your powder in and check your powder load. They have others that are made by Lyman Ohas, and that's this one right here. And so there's a whole array of powder measures and powder scales. Now I've chosen the powder measure that is made by RCBS, and I've just got this clamped to this little table to make it easy to use. I've got an amount of powder, and I didn't fill the whole thing up because I'm not doing that many cartridges. What you want to make sure and do, and I've done this several times, is you put your powder in, you reload, you go for a week, you come back, you can't remember what kind of powder you put in it. And so if you can't remember what kind of powder, you don't give it the little hand test like my wife's uncle did and determine, well, it looked just like 4831, but it could be 4198. But I think it's okay, so I'll use it. That doesn't cut it. Basically, the safest route to take at that point in time, and I hate to even think about it, is to pour the powder down the toilet that you've got in there. If you don't know what it is, do not use it. Even though you have used 2 or 3 different kinds of powder, if you're not sure it's the right kind of powder, do not use it. So the way that you do it is what I do is I take a little piece of paper with a rubber band, and I put that paper on there, and on that paper it tells the load that you've got, the bullet that you were dealing with, the cartridge, and the powder, how much powder you've got. You put it right on there. You can put one that sticks on, but pretty soon you've got so many of them stick on your thing that it's a problem. A rubber band and holding that down. And the best way to do it, though, is when you're done with that session of loading that cartridge, is to take the powder out of the mechanism, put it back in the can, and only have 1 can of powder on your reloading press. In this case, we just have one, 4227, so I've got just the amount. So we've got that adjusted, and now this is called a trickler. This happens to be an RCBS trickler. It's counterclockwise to make it trickle out. It's got a little threaded mechanism on the inside, and so it's made so that you can, when you put the powder load in here, and I'm going to turn it on, you turn it on and it zeroes out. When it zeroes out, right there, then you pick up the pan, and you've got all kinds of funnels that you can use, but this has got a funnel built into the pan. And so you take this pan and you put it underneath the powder measure, up, down, and then you take it over to your scales and you weigh it. It's supposed to be 15.5. It's exactly 15.5. I said it previously. Then you take that and your loads. Now I've got 2 cases here that I had for showing you what they were. I don't want those cases here where they can cause me any kind of problems. These are no problems because they're a different gun, but these cases I don't want any place around that I'm dealing with. So I take one of the cases from here, and I just turn it sideways on that, and then this powder goes directly in the case. All right? So I set that in. Put another load in it. We weigh it out. I generally go plus or minus 1/10 of a grain when I'm doing powder. And there we go. That's what we need right there. Then you take it out. And I always do this before I put my powder in. That makes sure I don't get a double load. And then I put it in. And you notice I turned all these upside down after I got finished. After I got finished putting the primers in and chamfer them, I turn them all upside down. That way I know when they're up, the right side up, that's the ones that I just put powder in. So again, when you really get set up and get going, it's a lot quicker than what I'm doing it right here. But you get the idea. There's one that's just right. And I'm not setting normally like I normally set. I'm setting off the side so that the camera can pick up what we're dealing with. That one's a little bit short, so I'm going to trickle just a little bit in it, and that's got it right there. And then the last one, you don't necessarily have to weigh it every time. A lot of us do to make sure we got it just right. But if you've got some like pistols and stuff, you can weigh every 10th round. Okay, now finally we've got the last ones loaded. Now let me just tell you about the mistakes that I made when I first loaded. Mistakes I made when I first loaded cost me a lot of trouble. And what I was doing is I was putting the powder in, and take that cartridge and put it in the press and putting a bullet in. The powder in, put the bullet in the press, powder in. All of a sudden somebody would come at the door, and I'd forget that I put powder in or didn't put powder in. And so sometimes I'd either have a double load or no load at all, normally no load at all. And so I had that mistake. So what you do now is after you've got the powder in those cases that you've got there, a double load will not fit in these cases. You take a flashlight and you look down and you make sure that all of them are about the same height and all of them have a load of powder. That's key. That's one of the safest things that you need to do in order to make sure you've got it right. There's 2 dies that come normally with reloading equipment. Sometimes if you're using pistols, you'll have 3 dies, and then you can have actually more. But 2 dies is normally with rifles and some pistols. And if you run it all the way down in this die, there is a little crimping spot where you will crimp it into a canaler. And so the canaler on these dies, these bullets do not have a crimping canaler. And so if you try to crimp it when it doesn't have a crimping canaler, you likely, almost certainly, will buckle your cases right in the beginning of the shoulder of the case. And of course you don't want to do that. So here are some bullets that we talked about. These are 45 grain bullets. And remember, the loading information we got was for 45. That's key to get the right weight bullet and the right style of bullet that you're dealing with. And so I haven't used this one before, so we'll open this up by cutting the top of it off. And then we'll take 5 bullets out. And it's already been preset. So now you'll take, and I'm going to set off to the side, but if you have magazine rifles, you have to make sure that the bullet is not set so far out that it won't go into the magazine if you intend to use the magazine. In a lot of cases, people will try to seat it so it just barely touches the lands, and by doing that, it may be too long for the magazine, and then you would have to shoot it single shot. So here we go. We're going to seat the first bullet in here. Now, you'll notice that this bullet barely seats it into the case. It's not even up to the groove. And so what we need to do is we need to change that. And I keep a Leatherman tool handy because it's what keeps me moving. So we want to take this down just a little bit. You do it in little increments so you don't get it set too far. Just a touch. Now the 221 Remington Fireball is a single shot, and so this is perfect. It's set right to the edge of the case. Then you lock this so that the next time it'll be just right. Okay. See how it's just perfect now? Once you got it set, all of them come out perfectly. After we're done loading this stuff, we plan on going up to the shooting range and shooting them to let you know just how good they do shoot. There we go. That is loading the 221 Remington Fireball. You can get all different kinds of bullets that you might want. You can get some that are, see this is a 223. This is a 222. And you can see the difference, oops, 222, 223, and the 222, 221 Remington Fireball. Okay, good. Now it's time to go out and shoot it, and as you go out and shoot it, you'll have a great time because you've actually done something that not many people do, and that's reload ammunition. It's a great hobby. You can save a lot of money. It actually develops better accuracy normally than what you can get in factory ammunition. But that's not always the case. There are some factory ammunition out there that is fabulous. But definitely it is a lot less expensive than the stuff that you buy. And in today's world of primers going up and being hard to get, and powder as well, I mean, the powder here a while back that was going for $32 a pound is up to $40-some a pound. It's just enormous. You know, it's not only gasoline prices that are hitting us hard and food prices. Situations as far as reloading and ammunition are going up too. So I hope you've learned something. I hope this is something that you can use in your life. We plan on taking you through a little tour through my reloading room in the next video. And at that time we can talk to you about some of the other things that I do. Is I reload my own primers, I make my own wads, make my own shot, make my own jacketed 22 caliber bullets, and just on and on and on. And all of those are just a lot of fun to do, and not necessarily that I can't afford to buy the components. I always wondered how some of this stuff was made and why they made it the way they did. And in some cases, with some of these antique guns, you can't get reloading components for them. You can't buy bullets, you can't buy primers, and only occasionally can you get dies for some of this stuff. And so if you're going to shoot it, you're going to have to reload. And then finally, we're going to shoot some antique rifles with black powder loads, not just the muzzleloaders, but the antique cartridge shooting pistols and rifles. And you'll really enjoy that, because there you'll be able to see the smoke, but you won't get to smell the smell. Have a nice day. Hope you enjoyed it.